Hi, I'm Josh Almond. I am a musician out of San Francisco, born and raised. I started my musical journey originally was on um, guitar. Was the first instrument I really learned. I began taking lessons in the late 80s, and then 2 years after that, I switched to bass guitar, and I became a bass player, and I played in bands. From 91 was my first band, and played gigs and did we I think we did a little demo recording in a studio, but it was a rehearsal space, not like a recording studio, on a 4 track. It was a 4 track. And then you progress to where you go into an actual recording studio. My first recording studio experience was at SF State, a friend of a friend's class, music production class that he was taking, and we came in as the group. This would have been my second band at that point, or the beginning of what became the second band. And that was interesting as well as incredibly nerve wracking because recording, you want to make sure you get it right. So it's all about preparing and rehearsing on your own to make sure you have your act together before you go in and record. And then those bands folded. The first one was at the end of 90 or end of summer of 92. And then the other one, they kind of overlapped a little bit. And then that one ended in early of 93. So it went about 9 months, the second band. And we didn't play in gigs, but we recorded some music once again in a rehearsal space. Well, it was our rehearsal space, and just straight um, to, I believe it was like a mixer to a DAT tape. And then I wasn't in another band for a while after that, although I did play one gig with the guitar player's band from the guitar player was in my first band. I played a gig with his band, which was a death metal band. And so there was the prep that went into that, rehearsing and then playing the gig. And I did not care for playing death metal, so I did not continue with that project. And in the later months of that year, which was 93, I rented my own rehearsal space and didn't really do much, but I had hoped, I think, to start another band. And I did end up starting another band, but we did not use the rehearsal space. We moved into someone's garage, and that would have been in the beginning of 94, which went about 6 months. And we played 3 gigs, and unfortunately, the drummer decided to move somewhere else with his family, and I just did not want to do the project without that guy. He was actually the drummer from the first band, which at one point during that band's existence we kicked him out and we got someone else. So this other band in 94 was, for me anyway, a chance to get to play with him again. And I really felt like I grew as a bass player at that point and really started to understand the process of the rhythm section because the guitar player was off noodling and I had to hold it down with the drummer. So it was a really good time. Um, and completely relaxed. There was no pressure. So it was fun, and we did come up with some songs. Most of the stuff was written by the guitar player, but collectively we came up with it together, and there was a few covers that we did. So then that folded, and the following during the summer, I was contacted by an old friend from high school who said someone he was working with, like in a job, um, that they were looking for a bass player. And so I connected with those guys. It was a guitar player and a drummer, and we started in the fall that year playing together. First, a couple times just try things out, and then we started playing every week. And once again, this was a completely relaxed situation with no. We didn't know what we're going to do at first. I think eventually it was like, oh, we'll get a singer, we'll get someone else involved down the road, and that's eventually what happened. We tried out. We brought in the singer who had been in that other two other bands. We didn't actually play with her. We we brought her in, and then we gave her a 4-track tape for her to try some vocals over. And that, I think that's a good way of trying out a singer. It gives them a chance to work on the stuff themselves without feeling pressured to come up with something right there on the spot when we didn't have any lyrics or vocal melodies or anything. It was just like they were our jam songs that we'd started to work together. So after that, which that didn't work out with her, but we tried out another couple of singers. One of them we liked, but I don't think he liked us. It just wasn't the right situation at the time. And then some time had passed, like a month or two, and then he approached us about recording with him, being his backup band essentially. So we went in and did a recording, and through that process, for rehearsing, and then going in to do the recording in an actual recording studio, which was in the same building that we were in, that we found that the stuff really sounded great, and we thought, oh, this would be fun to do live. This would sound really good live. So then we decided to become a band that way, and started playing gigs that fall. And that was in 95. No, yeah, that was 95 at that point. And we played, I'd say, probably 6 or 7 gigs that fall, and then continued doing that through 96, 97, and having some positive and some negative events happen. And then that band folded after a series of very bad and very good shows. But because of one of the bad shows, we kind of realized that we needed to just move on from the whole thing. And we decided that to break up, but we still played the last couple gigs, and it was quite an experience to do the last 2 gigs after we decided to break up. Then the singer of that band and I formed another group with a drummer, a power trio. And that group lasted from, it was the end of 97 is when we started with the drummer. But we were in the recording studio, in that same recording studio, in early January of 98, and we recorded essentially what became a demo that we started giving out to get gigs. And then eventually one of the songs, or a couple of the songs from that recording, went on our self-produced CD, which we put out in 99. And we did the whole CD, release party, and we did a mini tour up to Portland and played other gigs around to support it, and started selling them at our shows. We had them for sale. And we didn't really, it wasn't a lot of copies. It wasn't even 1,000 copies. We'd ordered 1,000, but it came in short, something like 970 copies. And then we continued to play gigs through those years, and I think it was something like 150 gigs from 98 to 2001. And we played our last gig together in December of 2001. And in January of 2002, I was feeling burnout. At that point, for me, it had been more than 10 years, and I wanted a break. And I didn't want to hold the guys back. So we had some conversations, and then I opted to leave the band. And really it was difficult, but I needed to just stop. And maybe that wasn't the right decision in terms of trying to progress towards what my dreams, what I initially wanted to do when I started out. But it was what I needed to do at the time. And I would say that in some ways there was regrets later on, but at the time I was like, I gotta stop. I need a break. And I didn't know if 6 months, I didn't know if telling the guys if 6 months was going to be enough. Because I didn't want to say, oh yeah, I need 6 months. Let me take 6 months off, and then come back to them in 6 months and say, oh, I'm not ready yet. I don't think I picked up my bass guitar for over a year at that point, like when I left the band. And that, I think, is one of my big regrets. I should have just took a few months off, and then either, if I left that band, just get into something else. But I didn't. I did do a lot of recording on my own. I'd already started doing that during the time, I think it was 2000 was when I started doing my own multi-tracking. And I continued doing that for a number of years. Kind of creating my own music, which I can't say was really great or anything, but it would have been, I think, decent enough to bring into a band situation to play some of those songs. Or even they could have been proto songs that we, if it was another group, could have embellished, took that material and made it to something else. So I ended up doing that for a number of years, and then in the end of 2005, the drummer from that last band, he had another group, and he got married, and at his wedding reception, those guys asked me if I wanted to play with them, but as their guitar player, as the lead guitar player. And I was like, okay, that's something new. So I did that. And so in 2006, 2007, we got together and played the songs they had there was no music coming from me. They had their style, and I was just gonna go in there and I could do whatever I wanted on guitar, which was a lot of fun because I'd never done that. I've been a lead guitar player in a band, but I'd been playing guitar primarily at that point on my own. So I think my first gig was at Gilman Street, and I remember hearing the the few people who were there. It was Mother's Day, and the few people were there just cheering me, and I was like, oh, wow, I'm doing something right because I get it. My first gig with this band is at Gilman, and I get an applause. Felt good. We played a bunch of other gigs. I don't remember exactly how many gigs that band played, but they were all really kind of like minor gigs. These places we played. We even played in someone's backyard. We did play clubs. We played an art gallery show, and some of the gigs were better than others. And one of them, that band, the previous band, uh, had a little reunion because the singer was there too. Because so I was playing with the drummer, so we were able to kind of switch up instruments and play a couple tunes. It was at the behest of the guy who was kind of producing the sound there at the club. He was probably the promoter guy, but he was someone we knew from back in the day. He was another musician and singer. So that band though, and we had something major happen to us during that time, was that the studio that we were in burned down. And unfortunately for us, none of our gear got burned up. We were the only band that was on the first floor, so we were the only ones who escaped with nothing but some water and smoke damage. And I had no gear in the studio at the time. It was the call I got from the singer. Said, "Did you have any gear in the studio?" What do you mean, did I? So because it burned up. But that wasn't the case. That was just what he thought at the time. Anyway, so then I started doing more multi-tracking because that band, I left that band after 2007. It was the end of 2007. I just didn't want to play someone else's. I didn't want to put time into someone else's music that I didn't care enough for. It wasn't that it was bad. It was just that I didn't feel invested in the creation of that sound. So I didn't want to do it. And there was some issue about a future gig in Europe, and I'm like, I'm not footing the bill to fly to Europe to play a gig. It's one thing to do it if you're going there, but I thought, and it would be the experience, but I couldn't fathom it for the cost part of it. And the guys were talking about, oh yeah, we'll stay on someone's couch. I'm like, if you're gonna go to Europe, you don't sleep on someone's couch. Come on. But of course, that was just a suggestion at that point. And I think also my consideration of it was that the drummer wasn't going to be able to go because he just had some kids. And I was like, he's not going. If he's not going, I don't want to go because he's my pal. Anyway, so I started doing more multi-tracking. That started with the computer at that point in 2009. And then, I started to kind of do more of my own thing. Meanwhile, in 2011, I got in touch with an old friend of mine from high school. He was actually the first guy who asked me to play bass in his band. It was right after I got my bass. And I'm like, I don't even know how to do this yet. And you want me to be in the band? That band was called The Maggots. What a great name. Anyway, so I started playing with him and the drummer, and they had a rehearsal space in that same studio that I rented back in '93. And we kept playing. And at one point, I left the group. We never really wrote songs. I left the group, but then we got back together, and we just kind of, it's been an intermittent thing over the years, the last several years. Of course, the last several years, it's been pretty much nothing. We've only played, I think we played twice last year, and that was the first time we played since 2020. But I've continued to create music on my own since, I started a bandcamp page in 2013 and just started creating electronic music. And then in 2018, I started doing FALM, February Album Writing Month. And that was more experimentation, multi-tracking on my own with multiple instruments. I even learned how to play a little bit of drums. And it's been a good experience. I can't say I've mastered anything with the process of songwriting or learning new instruments or devices, but it's fun, and it's something to have as a good hobby it's worthwhile. It really is. It expands my abilities, my mental state, and keeps me occupied when things in life can be hard. And that's always been that bright spot is FALM. And then the last 2 years I did 50/90. So FALM is February Album Writing Month, where you write 14 songs in 28 days. But in the summer, they do from July 4th to October 1st. Well, it's more than just the summer, but it's 50/90. So 50 songs in 90 days. Or is it 90 songs in 50 days? Well, I did that one last year. I did accomplish that. I think it was 90 songs in 50 days. It might have been 48 days, actually. But the stuff that I'm creating is not necessarily the same, verse, chorus, verse type stuff. I've done a little bit of that stuff, but I've also done a lot of experimental electronic, sometimes noise, sometimes it's generative, sometimes it's improvised acoustic guitar with spoken word. I've done a number of different things. I try to experiment and try and do something different each time because it's opening everything up, and the possibilities are infinite, really. And nowadays, I've really been trying to look for, and haven't been finding much, is that the types of things where people are discussing their, not just production techniques, but how they write. That's what fascinates me. That's what I want to hear more of. So that's it. And if you're interested, definitely check out FAWM. It's FAWM.org. FAWM, February Album Writing Month. And it starts soon. So I found it at the end of 2018, the end of January. It was a Tom Whitwell Medium article that he had written about this album that he wrote with, he did one night with a small modular system and a script. And somewhere in the article, it led to another article about arbitrary constraints and how there was a whole group of people who used that constraint of 28 days to write 14 songs. And it's a very good thing to have some type of block. I'm going to create this within half an hour. You have 1 hour to write a song. You can do it. I've done it. I've done it less than that time. Now, you can't sit there and program the stuff. You might not have time to do all that, but you could write lyrics. They might not be the best lyrics in the world either, but you can still start. And just by starting that, it leads to more. And that's the important thing. So that's it. I'm Josh Allman. Thank you for watching. Bye.